On this episode of Morning Kickoff, as the Minnesota Vikings are on a bye week, we'll be taking a look at 5 players who have exceeded expectations so far this season. As the Minnesota Vikings are 6 weeks done with their season, going into week 7, we do have a pretty early bye week this year. Luckily, it's not week 10 or 11 or whenever it was the previous season, but week 7 bye week, we're going to be taking a look at so far this season who has exceeded their expectations. And if you're watching a Morning Kickoff on YouTube, you can be taking a look at this new layout that we have going on. We have the scores going down here from last week's scores. We have the little logo slideshow in the background. Let me know how this looks. So I'm working more on the video aspect of things right now, as usually I was working on audio, but the video is a side of the Morning Kickoff podcast is also very important. So let me know how you think this is looking. But anyways, back to this Minnesota Vikings, 5 players who have exceeded expectations so far this season. As the Minnesota Vikings are going into week 7 bye week, it was pretty easy to pick out who really outperformed their expectations this season. And as a matter of fact, there was a lot of players I wanted to put on this list who I couldn't, who were not able to make the cut, because surprisingly, Vikings might be 3-3, but a lot of players have exceeded their expectations. And I wanted to put some honorable mentions I'll go over later in this episode, but I wanted to put them on this list, but they were not able to make the cut. So starting it off with number 5, we have Xavier Woods. Xavier Woods, first-year safety with the Minnesota Vikings, previously with the Dallas Cowboys, who he signed from free agency. Nobody talks about him really on this Vikings team, but has secretly been the best signing this offseason. The Minnesota Vikings bringing in Xavier Woods to be alongside Harrison Smith, 2 veterans, in protecting, really stopping big runs from the opposing offenses. Both players playing pretty much at the free safety position. Xavier Woods and Harrison Smith are both technically free safeties, the way they've been playing. Vikings love to run a lot of 2 deep safeties. But again, Minnesota Vikings, Xavier Woods has exceeded expectations by far, and no one is talking about him, has been secretly that X factor on this Vikings defense, as our Vikings defense, outside of the defensive line, has been a huge disappointment. Our outside linebackers all look terrible, and yes, I'm including Anthony Barr on that list just based off of the last 2 weeks we saw from him. Cornerback room has been the worst in the NFL, and it's not even close. Patrick Peterson will cut him some slack. He has had some bad matchups, but now without Patrick Peterson, it's just that worse. And now we have Bashad Breeland, Cameron Dantzler, and Mackenzie Alexander starting at corner. Not what you want to see. Our secondary as a whole is not good. Really, outside of our safeties and Eric Kendricks and our defensive line, the defense has sucked. And this is why the Vikings have been one of the worst teams against the run, and has also not been very good against the pass. So defense hasn't been great, but it's good to know that Xavier Woods has stepped into that starting role, playing all defensive snaps so far this season, only been targeted 11 times, allowing only 6 receptions in his 6 starts with the Minnesota Vikings, and having 35 total tackles, 4 pass deflections, a forced fumble, and an interception so far this season, giving himself a 71 PFF grade. Great job for Xavier Woods. Good to know he's on our roster. We don't have much depth at the safety position, so him and Harrison Smith, I'd continue to see maybe playing every single defensive snap for the Vikings for the rest of the season. So great player that nobody really talks about, and he did make the list and has exceeded expectations so far this season. For number 4, we have Alexander Mattison. Now, we knew Alexander Mattison was great. We knew he was a great backup running back to Dalvin Cook. What we didn't know is he could step into the starting role and look this great, because so far throughout his career, as Dalvin Cook has been injured, Alexander Mattison stepped into the starting role, didn't look all that great. Well, this year he has started 2 games with the Minnesota Vikings on offense, those 2 games being against the Seattle Seahawks and against the Detroit Lions. You might notice those are 2 terrible defenses. So we still haven't seen Alexander Mattison this season play or start against a great defense and look good. But put that aside, has done a great job stepping in for Dalvin Cook, an exceptionally great job stepping in for Dalvin Cook when he went down with the injury in the 2 games, getting 64 total touches for 245 scrimmage yards, 4.5 yards per carry, and a receiving touchdown, giving him a 61.8 PFF grade. Vikings have the best backfield in the NFL, and there is no question about that. Dalvin Cook is a top 3 running back. Alexander Mattison is a top 3 backup running back. On top of that, we have C.J. Ham, the best fullback in the NFL. Backing up C.J. Ham, we have Jake Vargas, who was able to step in last year as a backup fullback. And then outside of our running backs, Kene Nwanu, A.J. Rose, 2 other players who have Kene Nwanu we haven't seen much of, but we're assuming he's good. And then A.J. Rose looked phenomenal in the preseason. So our running back is really our only position where it is completely locked down. We have a lot of depth. So even if Dalvin Cook goes injured again, which it's going to happen, whether it's this season, next season, Dalvin Cook will get another injury. It's good to know that we have Alexander Mattison, A.J. Rose, Kene Nwanu, these players able to step up. So Alexander Mattison has exceeded expectations this season. Number 3, we have our quarterback, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is number 3 on this list because we knew he was a good quarterback. What we didn't know is 6 weeks into the year, he would be putting up MVP caliber numbers. Now, the most important quarterback stat is win-loss ratio. I will say that the most important quarterback stat is win-loss ratio, and right now the Vikings are 3-3, putting him out of the MVP conversation. However, the 3 losses that the Vikings have had have not been his fault. Week 1, it was the offensive line and their holding penalties, setting the offense back, giving him poor field position. Week 2, he set up a game-winning field goal, chip shot field goal for Greg Joseph, who shanked it, and the Minnesota Vikings lost. Again, against the Cleveland Browns, the offensive line just allowed too many sacks. Kirk Cousins, the best quarterback when he has a clean pocket. And there's no question about that. He's the best quarterback with a clean pocket and one of the worst when he is under pressure. So far this season, Kirk Cousins has put up MVP caliber numbers, making it 1,769 passing yards this season, 7th in the NFL, 69.5% completion percentage, 8th in the NFL, 13 passing touchdowns, which is 9th in the NFL, and only 2 interceptions through 6 weeks, which is great because at this point in the season, I'm pretty sure he had almost 10 last year, but 2 interceptions so far, which is tied 2nd in the NFL amongst starting quarterbacks who have started 6 games. So that's only behind Carson Wentz right now amongst quarterbacks who have started 6 games in the NFL with a 105.4 passer rating, making it 8th in the NFL, giving him an 89.9 PFF grade, meaning he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, top 5 so far this season in the NFL, and there's no question about that. Kirk Cousins should be in the MVP race, and the Vikings, with Kirk Cousins playing like this, Vikings should have at least a 4-1 record. I just don't understand how the Vikings are, or I guess that would be 5-1. I don't understand how the Vikings at this point in the season are 3-3 when Kirk Cousins is able to perform like this. It just comes down to the coaching staff at this point. So Kirk Cousins, number 3 on this list because he has exceeded expectations. Although the expectations were right here, they were pretty high for Kirk Cousins. He went to the next level and has looked like a great quarterback so far this season. And Kirktober isn't done. I mean, on the last day, he'll be playing the Dallas Cowboys at home. That's going to be a tough matchup for Kirk to be able to perform. But again, he'll be playing the Dallas Cowboys at home. Last day of Kirktober. He should be able to perform, especially when it's at home. For second on this list, we have Everson Griffen. Everson Griffen, 34 years old, has looked phenomenal with the Minnesota Vikings defense. And Everson Griffen is on this list because Minnesota Vikings signed him to be a backup defensive end to really DJ him, rotate him in on 3rd down, and really use him as that depth player. He's been more than just a depth piece on the Minnesota Vikings defense and is just look time and time again like the old Everson Griffen. I mean, he might be 34 years old, but he is the best 34-year-old defensive lineman I have ever seen. This guy is unstoppable, and he's been so far this season. Everson Griffen played only 54% of defensive snaps so far this season and is now our starting defensive end over DJ Wanham alongside Danielle Hunter. So we have our defensive end duo back, but only playing 54% of defensive snaps, where he racked up 11 total tackles, a forced fumble, and 4 sacks through 6 games. So Everson Griffen has just been time and time again one of the best defensive ends the best 34-year-old defensive end I've ever seen. It's going to be interesting to see if the Vikings, if Andre Patterson continues to play Everson Griffen as a starting defensive end. I don't think that's a good idea. Now, we can make a whole video on this, but having Everson Griffen starting fully energized, fully healthy on 3rd down, that's when you want him. Having him playing 4 straight downs as 34 years old, he gets tired out very easily. So, although we haven't seen it yet, I mean, he's 34 years old, so has exceeded expectations, and he's second on this list because his expectations were pretty low. Although it is Everson Griffen and one of the best defensive ends ever in Vikings history, expectations were pretty low because of the last season that he had where he was not with the Vikings. And again, he's 34 years old. So second on this list, has looked not like a 34-year-old defensive end, has looked like one of the best in the NFL, getting 4 sacks, forced fumble, has just been phenomenal on this Vikings defense. For number 1, you already know who number 1 is, and I don't have to talk much on this. KJOsborne. KJOsborne might be the best wide receiver 3 in the NFL. Second best, I guess Antonio Brown is technically a wide receiver 3. KJOsborne is phenomenal and has really stepped into that Vikings as that 3rd down threat. And this is something I had high expectations for KJOsborne. I did, because of what I saw in preseason, team OTAs, training camp, all of this. We had high expectations for KJOsborne because of how everyone was talking about him. We had no idea this guy was going to be a 3rd down threat, first read on 3rd down for Kirk Cousins. We had no idea that he was going to be able to make these contested catches, game-winning touchdowns for the Vikings. KJOsborne, it's not even close. Like, if you want to make your list of 5, it can be different. 2 through 5 can be different. KJOsborne is far up there, and not only is he the Vikings breakout player of the year and the Vikings a player who has exceeded expectations the most, but he's the best in the league when it comes to players who breakout players and exceeding expectations. When it comes to the wide receiver position, KJOsborne, he doesn't look like a 5th round, 2nd year player. He looks like a veteran, one of the best in the NFL. And I love to say that because with BC Johnson going out with an injury, Irv Smith Jr. going out with an injury, and Chad Beebe all missing this entire season, we needed someone to step up. And to see KJOsborne step up, and Tyler Conklin, he's not even on this list, but to see Tyler Conklin step up as well, to look like a tight end 1 out there, to see these players step up has really laid some pressure off of Kirk Cousins' back and have been able to split the ball, not just going to Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So far this season, KJOsborne had played 63% of offensive snaps, getting 35 targets so far this season for 26 receptions, 311 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns so far this season with a 68.2 PFF grade. KJOsborne is phenomenal. Obviously coming off of a walk-off touchdown where Kirk Cousins threw it to him in overtime, and the Vikings won the game against the Carolina Panthers, a great defense. Love to see it. KJOsborne, hands down, the best player who has exceeded expectations so far this season, and there's not much to say there other than that this player has been phenomenal, and you love to see it. This young guy, 2nd-year player out of Miami. And that really wraps it up for Vikings players. Some honorable mentions that I have to put here. Tyler Conklin, I mean, to see Irv Smith Jr. go down and Tyler Conklin to step up and look this good as a tight end 1 has been great. He hasn't been able to make he was not able to make this list, though, although he would probably be number 6 if I did make this list. Christian Darrisaw, I mean, only started 1 game in the NFL this year, but he was going up against Hassan Reddick, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, allowing 0 sacks and only 1 quarterback pressure. Christian Darrisaw, 1st-round draft pick out of Virginia Tech this year, our rookie stepping in at left tackle, has exceeded expectations. Also, Cameron Dantzler. I mean, Cameron Dantzler, we haven't seen much of, but when we did get to see him, has looked good as a 2nd-year player out of Mississippi State. So those are some honorable mentions that didn't make the list. But again, Vikings, KJOsborne, you love to see it, and he is by far the best player when it comes to players who have exceeded expectations this season so far. Thank you.